David knew that he could never beat Goliath by playing by Goliath's rules. And what was Goliath's rules? In close, hand-to-hand combat, where he can use his greatest advantages, his size and his strength. So what did David do? He changed the rules of engagement. First, he kept his distance. He didn't get close to Goliath, where Goliath could get those massive hands on David, because if he did, it would have been lights out. The second thing he did was he used Goliath's greatest asset, his size, against him. Goliath was too big and too slow to react quickly enough when David launched that rock like a missile. David won because he developed a strategy that played to his strengths. Not Goliath's, his strengths. And his strengths were speed and quickness. Strategy is everything. So, if you're a single store operator competing against the big boys, do you think you need a strategy? You cannot outperform competition if you play and accept their trade-offs. And if you're playing by the market leader's rules, that's usually competitive suicide. So what do you do as a single store operator? You be like David. You change the rules of engagement. You develop a strategy that plays to your strengths, not theirs. If you're one of those big companies out there and you have multiple stores, do you have any guarantees that the success that you've had up to this point is going to continue to be a success for you? How do you know someday that you might not be taken down by David or a disruptor? In times of accelerating change, relevance can never be taken for granted. Let me repeat that. In times of accelerating change, relevance can never be taken for granted. Consider the case of Garmin. Garmin was one of the early pioneers in the GPS industry. They got disrupted and they never saw it coming, which is how most disruptors operate. But they dominated the GPS industry until they were disrupted by a 26-year-old software engineer who created a mobile app for a GPS system. That disruptor was not operating in the GPS industry. She was operating in the mobile app industry. So she, quite frankly, wasn't even considering Garmin. She was considering this. As a result of this, Garmin lost 80% of their market cap. Strategy is everything. The current pace of change is like a missile up your tailpipe. Boom! You're irrelevant. If you didn't react quickly enough or if you didn't see it coming. If you're currently behind the change curve, you're already dead. Your obituary just hasn't been written yet. So strategy could be a safeguard to prevent you from getting blindsided. The one thing single store operators have in common with the larger change is money. And when I talk money, I'm talking net profit or EBITDA. I'm not talking about things like sales and gross profit margin and shrink. Those are certainly important metrics, but they're a means to an end. And that end is net profit. It's the only true meaningful metric at the end of the day, bar none. How much money you left with at the end of the day to take to the bank. That's what it's about. I always get amazed by people in some meetings and stuff. We always talk about sales and gross profit margin, sales and gross profit margin. Sales, we never talk about net profit. Isn't that really the end game? So that's what we're going to try to do. Hopefully we'll give you some ideas and a strategy to focus on that today. But I will tell you this, like anything else in life, strategy, it's your choice. You can decide that you don't need a strategy, and you could take a passive approach, and you can let the future come to you, and you can just aimlessly drift in the currents of the market. Or you could develop a strategy, and you can take control with purposeful intent of your future and win. First step in developing your strategy is you got to start with the customer. Always start with the customer and work back to the strategy. Whatever you do, the customer is going to be the centerpiece and the most important part of the equation. 3 things to do with a customer. 1, identify who your customers are. Are they soccer moms or working moms? Are they white collar or blue collar? Are they millennials? Are they Gen X? Are they boomers? Are they matures? Are they ethnic Americans? If they're ethnic Americans, what group? Is it all of them or some of them? But exactly, find out who your customers are. Step number 2, determine what your customers value most. Is it price? Is it location? Is it your food service? Is it your car wash? Is it customer service? Is it your landscaping? Is it your restrooms? What is it? Don't assume you know if you don't have the data to tell you. And a lot of times we always default by, well, it's the location or it's my price. Really? How can you say that if you don't know? Now, the way to get some intel on your customers is 2 ways. 1, customer intercepts. And by the way, these 2 ways, you don't have to spend money to get some company in there that's going to charge you a lot of money to talk to your customers. If you're the owners of your stores, you should be doing that. And the first thing is customer intercepts. When you're at the store, when you see the customer outside pumping gas, I mean, they're just hanging out for a few seconds, a few minutes, right? Go up and talk to them. Hi, I'm Terry. I own this store. Can I ask you a quick question? Why do you come to my store? With all the choices, why my store? That's it. One question. Very simple. I think you may be surprised at their reason. Other questions you can do on customer intercepts. Again, provide introduction. Tell them who you are, especially people who pump on the island, the forecourt. They never come in the store. They never see anybody out there. So they might be a little bit suspicious, like, well, who is this person coming over to me? I never see anybody out here. So provide the introduction. Tell them your owner. But another question could be, hey, what's the one thing we do here that you really like? What's the one thing we do that frustrates you? If you own this store, what would you change? But try to get all that information from your customers. Now, the other way to get intel on your customers is to observe your customer interacting with your store. Are there any companies in here who do focus groups? I've got a good friend in here who's a client. He did a focus group. I told him not to do it. He did it anyways, right, Steve? Here's my view on focus groups. So I'm going to gun deck them a little bit. They're good for some things, but my experience back when I was at Mobile, I was behind the glass window on a focus group. That stuff is like weird. I mean, it's kind of like dysfunctional. People start to compete with each other in there. There's always one jackass that tries to show how smart he is over everybody else. But the bottom line is, in focus groups, what they say and what they do, it's 2 different things. So if you really want to get the best data, raw data on your customer, watch them interacting with your store. What is it like to get coffee off of your coffee bar? Is it frustrating? Because there's sugar on the counter, I can't find my creamer, my coffee pot is half empty and it's a mess. But yet when I encounter your fountain, it's great. You got my chewy ice, I got my cups, my lids, I'm in and out of there. What's that interaction like at the transaction counter? So observe your customers in the store interacting with your store. That's the best data you're going to get. You could do focus groups for some things, and that's going to cost you money, but do your customer intercepts and do watch your customers as they're interacting with your store. The third thing, once you've identified who your customers are, and once you've figured out what's most important to them value-wise, pick one customer segment and target it. That one segment you pick, dominate that segment. Say it's working moms. Figure out what's important to working moms. If they represent a pretty good base of your customers in your store, learn everything you can about working moms, and then stand for working moms and provide them the best experience. So that working mom walks out thinking, man, this store gets me. They really understand my frustration. This is my store. Now, that's not to suggest that you're going to ignore all your other customers and not provide them value. You are. But you're going to specialize in one segment. Maybe it's the Latino segment. Maybe it's millennials. I don't know, because I don't know your customers. You got to figure that out. So pick one customer segment and stand for that one segment. And the other thing that I would encourage you is don't get satisfied with that word satisfied. I always see that word satisfied on mystery shops. Let me tell you something. Satisfied customers, they defect. They will go to your competitors. They do it all the time. So what does satisfied mean? What you ought to be doing is go beyond satisfied. Build a deeper relationship with your customers that can really lock them into you. And a way to do that is to focus on the entire experience, not the product. Too many brands are caught up with their Taj Mahal stores and all the products in there. I'll tell you what, you can have a beautiful 6,000 square foot state-of-the-art store, But if you got some knucklehead behind that counter delivering poor service, all that brick and mortar and plastic really doesn't matter. So focus on the entire experience as opposed to your facility and the products. What is it like for your customer to experience your store? When they drive by on the street, when they come into the ingress, they go to your forecourt, they go into your store, and they leave. What is that total experience like? Focus on that. And don't get caught up in that word satisfied, because you're not going to be able to make a lot of money on that word satisfied. It's better than unsatisfied, but do know, don't get comfortable thinking, well, they're satisfied, so I got them for life. No, you don't.